I just recorded this entire video for 20 minutes on my GoPro, and I realized the volume sucked. So I'm going to redo it. I have a laptop next to me with some notes because I tend to lose track of what I'm talking about sometimes. What is this video? This video, I don't really know how to do these. I've never done a video like this before. Talking to a camera feels a little weird, but what is this video? This video is about peroneal nerve injuries and the resulting foot drop. It's about information behind it, what it is, how it happens, and what you can do about it. I'm making this because I have one of these injuries. I was injured last year, which I'll talk about here in a bit. And when it happened, I got a lot of bad information from my orthopedic and from people at the hospital in general. It took a lot of work to figure out what these injuries really are and what I can do. And if I didn't get this information, I'm not sure I would have ever recovered from it. Well, I'm still in the process of recovering, but I think I would be in a lot worse of a spot right now. So I also want to mention, when I was learning all this stuff and researching, I found someone else online who had a very similar injury and went through the exact same treatment that I did, and has now pretty much fully recovered. He's trained for a marathon. So without him, I'm not sure if I'd be where I am now. So I'm hoping I can do the same for someone who's watching this video. So what is the peroneal nerve? The peroneal nerve is a nerve in your legs that branches off from the sciatic nerve and splits into two pieces. And one of them controls dorsiflexing, so lifting your foot up, which you use constantly. Like when you're walking, you're using the nerve, you're using the muscles that connect to the nerve to keep your foot level or pick it up when you're walking. Without it, your foot hangs, which is foot drop. And this nerve also controls eversion, so moving your foot away from the body. It's my right foot, so this motion here is also paralyzed. What does foot drop do? It's debilitating. You can't walk normally. You can get braces, which is one I have, and maybe I'll show that later in this video, that you can put in your shoe and allows you to walk normally, but your balance is shot. I can't stand on my foot for more than 3 seconds without putting my other one down. You can't do sports. You can't run. You can't really do anything. Even while like taking your shoe off and taking the brace off, I walk extremely slowly and carefully, because when you're walking, your hanging foot is very easy to catch and trip, which is foot drop. So yeah, it sucks. And yeah, I guess that covers what foot drop is and what a peroneal nerve injury is. I'll talk more about it. Maybe I'll explain what happened to me first. So last November, it's August of 2024 right now. Last November of 2023, I was wakeboarding. I landed awkwardly in the water, hyperextended my knee, and had what's called a posterolateral corner injury. So this is an area on the back side of the knee that contains your peroneal nerve and a number of other structures and ligaments. It's common, not common, but the peroneal nerve does get damaged in posterolateral corner injuries. I found a statistic online at one point of how many posterolateral corner injuries also have an injury to this nerve. I can't remember what it was, but it was maybe like a quarter of them or something like that. So yeah, I blew out my knee, went to the hospital, got a bunch of scans and stuff done. The doctors there were feeling and touching my leg and foot and asking me to move it in certain directions, asking if I could feel certain areas, and I couldn't. I didn't know really what that meant. I obviously like knew you could get paralyzed, but I didn't know you could damage a nerve in your leg and paralyze part of your foot. I had no clue what that was. So I figured, this is just part of whatever ligament I tore is just causing numbness and it's going to come back. So spent the night in the hospital, got some scans done. They told me a bunch of stuff that I tore. I was kind of crushed and exhausted because I spent the whole night there sleeping in the hallway. So when they were telling me what happened and what I tore, I didn't really comprehend it. I just knew it was bad. Then I went to an orthopedic a couple of days later, and he told me I tore my LCL, ACL, hamstring tendon, and then stretched the peroneal nerve. So he told me that he's seen it before, and there was maybe like a 30% chance it would never heal, and I'd be, my foot would be half paralyzed for the rest of my life, and I'd never be able to do sports. And yeah, that definitely crushed me. So skip ahead to a month and a half later when I got surgery on the ligaments. My parents came down to Florida here for the surgery to be with me. And once he finished and I was still under, he went out to my parents and told them how it went, and also said the nerve injury was one of the worst he's ever seen in terms of the scarring and the swelling and just the overall appearance of it, and that he thought I would be in a brace for the rest of my life. So coming out of the surgery, hearing that news was devastating. Not being able to do sports, let alone walk normally again, sucks, as you can imagine, and as maybe you've been told something similar, but it's not true, which I'll explain why. So I was crushed, obviously, and I didn't want to accept that, so I began doing a lot of research. I also talked, like I mentioned earlier, to someone online who helped me a bunch. But during my research, I learned there are multiple different levels of peripheral nerve injury. Peripheral nerves are the nerves that are in your ligaments that control your movements, your feeling in your arms and legs, which are a lot different than your central nervous system, which is, your brain and your spine. So these different severities, I think it's 1 to 5, and there's terms for each of them. I don't remember all of the scientific names, but you can find them online. The first 1 or 2 will have a high likelihood of healing by themselves, while 4 and 5 not going to heal on its own. I think 4 is like very unlikely, 3 is somewhere in the middle. So your peripheral nerve can be damaged through compression, so it being squashed by like 2 structures hitting it, or something falling on your leg, something extremely heavy, or arm. It can be stretched, which is what happened to me. You can think of force pulling 2 ends apart and the middle area becoming thinned out and damaged, and then it can be cut in half. That's the worst one, and it will not heal without surgical intervention. These other ones, compression, stretching, those are a little bit more complicated, and the important piece is that you can't just look at the nerve and determine what severity it is. The nerve, you can think of like, the way I think of it that's helped me is one of those big, when they're running electrical wiring, they kind of make like those cases sometimes that contain a bunch of different wires. That's the way I kind of think about it. The nerves have a bunch of structures inside. So while that outer shell could be fully intact, depending on how much damage there is to the structures inside, it may or may not heal on its own. And like I said, you can't just look at it and see what's damaged on the inside. There's not even a great way to do that with scans and tests. what you can do, let me back up. So that's the overall, like, how the damage works. And my orthopedic was saying, we're gonna wait. I've seen this injury before. Usually people who recover start getting signals around like 9 months or so, and they start getting feeling and movement. So we're gonna wait it out and see if that happens, which is horrible advice. And I'm not blaming him. I know he wants the best thing for his patients, but he's just misinformed and doesn't know the latest science behind this area of medicine. You cannot wait. And you can't wait because when these nerves get damaged, the signal, obviously, like we've talked about, stops flowing through it. So imagine the nerve's right here, your muscle is down here where it connects, your injury area is up here. So there's no more signal getting down to the muscle. Where the nerve connects to the muscle, there's something called the motor end plate. The motor end plate is kind of like, I think of it like plugging the outlet into the wall. Think of it like the outlet. So this is where the electricity connects and gets into the structure that allows the muscle to function. If that end plate doesn't get signals in around 18 months-ish, it dies and it will never come back, and there's nothing you can do about that. You're screwed. So if you wait, 9 months, like my orthopedic was saying, and it doesn't turn back on, well, now you've just lost 9 months. And if you do surgery, like a nerve transfer, which I'll explain later, which is what I got, nerves heal very slowly after a procedure like that. And after an injury in general, they heal like 1 millimeter a day. So depending on where your injury is, where the surgery area is, that healing process, it doesn't even start right away after surgery. It takes a few weeks. But once it starts, it's about 1 millimeter a day that it has to move down the nerve. Those signals start going. So with 1 millimeter a day, depending on how far away that end plate is, it could die before the signals get there, and you're out of luck. You're gonna have a paralyzed limb. If you're late in the game right now, there still is a chance, but your chances do decrease over time. The 18 months I've seen also quoted like 24 months. I've also seen 12 months. So there's a lot of variables, age, health-wise, there's a lot of different things. So don't panic. I'm gonna talk about what you can do. But it's important that the earlier you do something about it and talk to the right people, the better chance you're giving yourself. So what you can do early in the process is connect with a neurologist. I worked with Dr. Stephen Burks in Miami, Florida. He's out of Miami University. I highly recommend him if you're in the area. He was great. You should connect with a neurologist if you have one of these injuries, and over the first few months, they should do MRIs and EMGs. These scans will allow the neurologist, if he has peripheral nerve knowledge, to get some insight into the severity of the injury and whether signals are starting to come through. So, you do a baseline EMG on day 0, call it, do another one a month or 2 later, and then again. And we can see, if there were 0 signals coming through here, a couple months down the line, do we have a little bit of signal coming through? Because then, that's improvement, that's sinus healing. And if not, then you start thinking about other options. So I got to around 4 or 5 months, and the evidence was not conclusive that my injury was healing. So there is some reason around that 4 or 5 months, and I can't remember exactly the details behind why, but basically this is the point where if you're not seeing any signals or improvements, there's a pretty good shot it's not going to heal. So I started researching, trying to find, because Dr. Stephen Burks is great and is a nerve specialist, but at the time he hadn't done a nerve transfer surgery. I think he's done one now. So I'm sure he's very capable. I just wanted to find someone with the most experience and the best statistical results, which is not easy to find for this type of injury. There's only a few doctors in the entire United States who have, good experience with it. You can find doctors who've done it a couple times, but there's not many who have done it dozens of times and have good results. So I talked with a few around the country, and the guy online I mentioned earlier referred me to the one he saw in Los Angeles, Dr. Mitch Seruya. So I reached out to him, reached out to his office. He sent me 2 papers he's written on his surgery. He's currently making a 3rd. I'll post links to all this. Well, I can't post links to his papers, but if you reach out to his office, he'll be more than happy to give them to you so you can read them as well. He actually might have posted them as his Instagram, which I'll link. But I read his papers that taught me a lot more about these injuries and the procedure he does. So I was very interested. I then got on the phone with him and asked a bunch of questions. He's done, I think, 40 to 50 of these now, and he's got like 85 to 90% significant results, 85 to 90% significant success. So there's different levels of recovery. You might not get crazy dorsiflexion back. You might get very comfortable that allows you to walk and do sports again. There's different levels, obviously, but 85 to 90% of his patients have had very, very good results, which was by far the best I had seen any of the doctors in the US in terms of this surgery. So I flew out to California, saw him on Monday, and ended up getting into surgery the next day. So I'll explain a little bit about the surgery he does. So a nerve transfer, here's the peroneal nerve right here. That's controlling dorsiflexion and eversion in your foot. Here is, I can't remember the name of it, but there's some nerves that control curling your toes. It controls the muscles that it's the nerve that sends the signals to the muscles that control curling your toes. So it's crazy. He does these nerves, the toe ones, and I think all nerves, there's like different pieces of them in a way. So what he does is he takes some of those pieces and cuts them and transfers them. It's kind of like a bypass, transfers them over to your damaged nerve below the injury, and it's like a bypass. So now signals flowing down here will cross over, connect to your nerve that's damaged, but it's damaged up here, so down here can still work. So those signals now flow down, connect here, which then flow into the muscles that are paralyzed. So this allows you to, instead of thinking about lifting your foot or everting, you think about curling your toes, and it controls dorsiflexion and eversion. It's absolutely insane. And eventually your body is able to distinguish between the 3 and independently use each of those functions. It's absolutely nuts. So I got this surgery done. It takes a very long time because, like I said, nerves heal slowly. So mine was done in April. I'm about 4 months post-op right now, and I've started getting a little bit of eversion back, which after this I'll grab my phone here and I'll film what that looks like. I'm ahead of schedule. Usually it takes 6 to 9 months for eversion to come back and 9 to 12 for dorsiflexion. So I'm ahead of schedule already. I don't have any dorsiflexion yet, but nerves heal very slowly, like I've said 3 times now. And it takes about 3 years to get to your max capability of those functions. But the guy I talked to online, I think he's a little bit over a year out from his surgery now, and he's probably a year and a half or so. He's training for a marathon, so he said his balance is like 80% of what it once was, and he's still got more healing to go. So it's truly incredible. I think that's pretty much it. I'll take a video of what it looks like when I walk, and I'll put it somewhere in this. Same with some eversion, showing what that looks like. But I hope this all made sense. I'll post links to the Los Angeles Nerve Institute that Mitchell Seruya runs. I'll post that below. I'll also post links to his social media. And please, reach out to me, post a comment if you have questions. He was also, the doctor, Mitchell Seruya, was also on a podcast with one of his patients. It's a couple hours long, and it'll pretty much cover everything you could possibly need to know. And you'll get a good idea of what it truly is like and what kind of guy he is. So I recommend listening to that. It's on Spotify. I'll post a link to that as well. But yeah, thanks for listening. I hope you guys learned something from this, and best of luck to you. So hopefully you guys will get to see this. As a reminder, this is just the current state right now of my healing process. I've got a long way to go, and I have zero dorsiflexion at the moment. But this is what it looks like to walk. So you step normally. Here's your dorsiflexion is activating in my good foot. In my paralyzed foot, I step and it hangs. So there's where your toes can get caught. So to walk without my brace, I have to step high, like that. So here's what the Eversion looks like. Here's a nice close-up of my foot. So as you can see, it's very, very subtle, but this was paralyzed for the past, 6 months or so. I'm not even filming it, there it is. That was not even possible a couple months ago. As you can see, my toes are slightly curling. I haven't learned yet how to do it without curling my toes, but that's part of the healing process.